What happens when two of China's most advanced warships lock their targeting radar directly onto an American destroyer, and both sides refuse to blink? That 3-minute window is the difference between a tense standoff and the first shots of a war that would reshape the entire world. If you've ever wanted to understand how close the world actually gets to the edge, this is the video you need to watch right now. Before we go any further, if this kind of deep military analysis is what you've been looking for, hit that like button right now, subscribe so you never miss a breakdown like this, and share this with someone who needs to understand what's really happening in these waters. Now let's get into it. It's just before 2:30 in the morning. The Strait of Hormuz sits dark and restless. Roughly 20% of the world's oil passes through this narrow choke point every single day. And tonight, that choke point has become the most dangerous body of water on the planet. A U.S. Navy destroyer is enforcing a blockade. The reason doesn't matter as much as the reality. The ship is holding the line, and everyone on the other side wants through. Tensions between Washington and Tehran have been climbing for weeks. Diplomatic channels have gone cold. And now, on the radar screens inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center, something new is appearing. A massive Chinese supertanker, loaded with strategic crude oil, is moving directly toward the blockade. It is not slowing down. Behind it, two Chinese Type 052D destroyers are moving into position. These are not support ships. These are China's most capable surface combatants. Each one carries long-range radar systems and anti-ship missiles that can threaten anything on the water within several hundred kilometers. Their presence here is not accidental. Beijing wants this tanker through, and they're willing to apply enough military pressure to make that happen without technically starting a war. That's the calculation. Not open conflict, just enough force to make the U.S. step aside. But stepping aside isn't an option the American commander is willing to consider. The destroyer, an Arleigh Burke Flight III, is one of the most sophisticated surface warships ever built. Its Aegis combat system is capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously, even through heavy electronic interference. The crew has trained for exactly this kind of scenario: high pressure, multiple threats, split-second decisions. Right now, every one of those skills is about to be tested. On the Iranian side of the equation, the Revolutionary Guard has been watching this confrontation build. They see an opportunity. While China applies naval pressure from the front, Iran begins deploying from the coast. Fast patrol boats, surveillance drones, and something more unsettling: kamikaze drones launching from multiple points along the shoreline. The American sensor network starts getting crowded. Targets everywhere, some confirmed, some ambiguous, some flickering in and out at the edges of detection range. The U.S. Carrier Strike Group, operating under strict radio silence some distance away, is monitoring everything. P-8, Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft circle high above the scene, feeding real-time tracking data into the network. An MH-60R Seahawk helicopter has already launched from the destroyer's deck to shadow the supertanker up close. Eyes everywhere, but the closer things get, the faster everything can go wrong. Radio warnings are exchanged. Neither side backs down. At 2:43 in the morning, an Iranian Ababil 3 drone cuts directly across the destroyer's security perimeter, 500 meters. That is the line, and the drone just crossed it. The rules of engagement are clear. A burst from the ship's 25mm deck gun tears the drone apart. Carbon fiber and burning fuel scatter across the water. It takes less than 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds, everything changes. The lead Chinese Type 052D destroyer responds immediately. Its Type 346 radar, already in search mode, shifts. The beam narrows. The frequency changes. The system locks onto the American warship with active combat tracking. This is not a warning. This is a firing solution. The radar is now providing targeting coordinates precise enough to guide missiles to the exact location of the U.S. destroyer. And those coordinates are being shared in real time with Iranian coastal missile batteries sitting on the shore. Inside the American CIC, the radar warning receivers light up. Everyone in that room knows what an active targeting lock feels like. It feels like a countdown. 2 C-802 anti-ship cruise missiles launch from the Iranian coast. The Aegis system takes over. No hesitation, no delay. The combat management software has already calculated intercept trajectories before the human operators have fully processed the threat. Two SM-6 missiles climb out of the destroyer's vertical launch system and race toward the incoming threats. High-altitude detonations. Both Iranian missiles destroyed before they get close. But the attack doesn't stop there. Iran escalates into a saturation strike, the kind of assault designed to overwhelm a defense system by sheer volume. Waves of Shahed drones fill the airspace from multiple directions. Rocket-armed speedboats push in from the flanks. More C-802 missiles are already in the air. The destroyer's Phalanx CIWS, the last-ditch rotary cannon that can fire 4,500 rounds per minute, begins spinning, tracking everything it can reach. SM-6s continue launching. ESSM missiles stand ready for anything that leaks through. F/A-18 Super Hornets from the carrier scream into the airspace. They don't fire. Instead, they execute low-altitude passes that send sonic booms hammering across the water directly around the Iranian boat swarms. Simultaneously, they deploy flares and electronic countermeasures to defeat shoulder-fired missiles coming from below. It's a show of presence, a message, back off. The U.S. also deploys a quieter weapon, one that doesn't announce itself with fire or sound. CWIP Block III, an advanced electronic warfare system, begins surgically jamming Iranian drone data links. Not blanket interference that would blind everything in the area, targeted disruption, sector by sector, breaking the coordination of specific drone groups. Shade drones that were flying in tight, organized formations start spiraling. Their guidance broken. Their mission failed. The swarm begins unraveling at its edges. But the supertanker is still moving, shielded by the electronic shadow of the Chinese destroyers, which are now blasting high-power radar interference across the entire operational zone. The tanker continues its push through the strait. And at 2:50 in the morning, the second Chinese Type 052D destroyer enters the picture, hugging the port side of the tanker and accelerating. The corridor is narrowing. The pressure is compounding. Then it happens. A single Iranian suicide drone, launched from a civilian fishing vessel specifically to hide its electronic signature, slips through the outer air defense layer. It detonates near the destroyer's superstructure. Not a fatal hit, but the explosion shreds satellite communication antennas and damages key data link hardware. For a critical stretch of minutes, the American destroyer is partially cut off from the wider fleet network. It's fighting fires, it's isolated, and the tanker seizes that moment, killing its AIS transponder and accelerating through the gap in the blockade line. The blockade is cracking. The clock is running. All right, take a breath, because we're about to get into the part most analysts never talk about. Before we do, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think the U.S. should have engaged the Chinese destroyers directly? Let's see where the audience lands on this. And if you're watching this on someone else's recommendation and haven't subscribed yet, do it now. This channel breaks down the real mechanics behind these confrontations every single time. By 3:05 in the morning, the situation has reached its absolute critical point. The American destroyer is damaged and partially blind. The tanker is moving fast through the opening, and the lead Chinese 052D is now positioning itself to physically block any American ship that tries to intercept. Then it fires. Two YJ-18 supersonic anti-ship missiles launch from the Chinese destroyer. These are not simple weapons. They fly at subsonic speed during their approach, conserving fuel, staying low, and then ignite a terminal acceleration booster in the final phase, screaming toward their target at nearly Mach 3. The entire purpose of this launch is to force the American destroyer into emergency defense mode. Pull its attention. Make it impossible to also chase the tanker. It almost works. Almost, because the U.S. has been holding something back. Earlier in the night, radar operators picked up strange, faint electronic signals drifting at the very edge of the battle space. Too faint to classify, too disciplined to be noise. Now those signals reveal exactly what they are. F-35C. Lightning II stealth fighters from the carrier strike group have been in the fight the entire time. They just haven't been visible. These aircraft operate in a mode where their APG-81 radar transmits at low probability of intercept, meaning it collects targeting data without generating the kind of radar returns that enemy systems can detect and locate. Iranian radar operators and Chinese electronic warfare suites have been searching for these jets and finding nothing but ghost signals that vanish before they can achieve a lock. While the destroyer handles the incoming YJ-18S with its remaining SM-6 missiles, the F-35CS are doing something far more important. They are fusing every piece of intelligence in the operational picture. Data from the MQ-9 Reaper tracking the tanker through oil smoke and jamming, feeds from the E-2D Hawkeye airborne battle manager that has just restored the fleet's tactical network, targeting solutions from the Seahawk helicopters, and synthesizing it all into a single precise kill chain. At 3:17 in the morning, an MQ-9 Reaper operating at safe distance from Iranian air defenses locks its multispectral targeting system onto the supertanker's heat signature. It relays that data to the Hawkeye orbiting 100 miles out. The Hawkeye uses it to bypass the jammed satellite links and switch to secure Link 16 channels, rebuilding the common operational picture that the Iranian drone strike tried to destroy. The fleet is back online. The electronic assault begins reversing. The once overwhelming saturation attack starts losing momentum as restored American defenses begin methodically eliminating threats. And now, with the F-35Cs feeding precision targeting data for an over-the-horizon strike, Super Hornets launch long-range anti-ship missiles guided by those invisible stealth aircraft. The missiles find the lead Chinese O-52D's primary radar array. One missile tears directly into the combat radar system. The ship's ability to track, guide, and share targeting data is destroyed. Its electronic contribution to the battle, the interference it was generating, the targeting coordinates it was providing Iran, goes silent. The second Chinese destroyer, now alone and exposed, deploys multispectral smoke and decoys and turns its damaged sister ship toward the deeper waters of the Gulf of Oman. Beijing's gamble is over. On the Iranian side, the collapse is rapid. With drone data links jammed and fast attack boats being systematically destroyed by Hellfire missiles from the Seahawk helicopters, the swarm formation, that disciplined shark fin assault pattern, disintegrates into individual boats running for the coast near Bandar Abbas. The sky that was full of Shahed drones an hour ago is now marked by burning debris and the smell of carbon fiber and fuel. MQ-9 Reapers and P-8 Poseidons maintain continuous watch, tracking every retreat, ensuring nothing turns back around without immediate consequences. By 3:40 in the morning, the lead Chinese destroyer, its radar still smoking, has transitioned to emergency defense mode. Its combat capability is effectively gone. It cannot escort anything. It cannot protect anything. Naval command orders full withdrawal, and at that moment, the supertanker, and stripped of its Chinese radar cover, stripped of its IRGC escort, surrounded by burning wreckage and oil slicks, shuts down its engines. It drifts. The massive vessel carrying billions of dollars of strategic crude sits helpless in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz, surrounded by the debris of everything that tried to get it through. The Arleigh Burke Flight III destroyer, damaged, communication impaired, but still holding its position, has its 5-inch main gun trained on the tanker's bridge. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the U.S. Navy reclaims the corridor. The blockade holds. Now, here's what I want you to think about, because this is where most military analysis stops and where the real conversation actually begins. Everything you just watched was a masterclass in gray zone warfare. China never declared hostile intent. China never officially fired on an American warship. Everything it did existed in that ambiguous space between coercion and combat, enough pressure to create leverage, not enough provocation to trigger the full weight of American retaliation. That is the strategy. And it nearly worked, if that suicide drone hadn't damaged the destroyer's communications. If the second Chinese O-52D had positioned slightly differently, if the tanker had gotten just a few more miles through that gap, the story might have ended differently. But it also raises a harder question. What if Washington had decided from the very beginning that restraint was a liability? F-35s, Super Hornets, and Tomahawk cruise missiles could have escalated this confrontation into an air campaign within the first 20 minutes. Once a Chinese warship is struck, not damaged by a precise radar kill, but sunk, this conflict doesn't stay inside the Strait of Hormuz. It pulls in Taiwan. It pulls in South Korea. It pulls in every American treaty ally in the Pacific. Global oil markets crash, shipping insurance rates make trade economically unworkable. Every regional military starts doing calculations it really doesn't want to do. That's the tightrope the commanders in that CIC were walking all night. Not just, can we win this fight, but how do we win this fight without starting a much larger one? Because here's what the Strait of Hormuz teaches you about modern warfare. The most dangerous moments aren't when two sides are shooting at each other. The most dangerous moment is that window, those final 3 minutes, when both sides have the capability to destroy each other, and the entire outcome rests on whether one commander somewhere makes a decision that cannot be taken back. The U.S. Navy threaded that needle this time. But the Chinese Navy learned something tonight, too. It learned exactly where the gaps are. It learned how the Aegis system responds under saturation. It learned how long it takes for the F-35Cs to join the fight. It learned what a damaged destroyer does when it loses its communications link. Every piece of that data goes into a file. That file gets studied. And the next time this scenario unfolds, because there will be a next time, the margins will be even smaller. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just a shipping lane, it's a proving ground, and both sides are taking notes. So let me ask you the question that keeps serious analysts up at night. If China and Iran coordinate another attempt, more drones, better timed communications disruption, a second tanker moving simultaneously through a different point in the strait, does the same playbook work twice? Think about that. And then go find someone who needs to understand what's actually happening in these waters and send them this video. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, something you couldn't get from the headlines, that's exactly what this channel is built to do. The subscribe button is right there. Every analysis we publish goes deeper than the surface. Every scenario we break down is built on real doctrine, real hardware, and real strategic logic. Come back for the next one, because the world doesn't slow down, and neither do we.